Hi, welcome to another episode of our Eat and Drink Real Estate Podcast. My name is Scott Burgess. Today I am joined with a very special guest, Charley. How are you?
Hey Scott, how are you?
Now, you and I go back, I'll say a little ways to be polite, but it's late
a while.
90s.
Yeah.
So, you and I first met actually at Citywide, correct?
Yes, we did.
All right. And so you've talk about your transition from the title side of things into now a broker.
Yes.
And kind of some things that you took with you, maybe are good and bad stuff, how that helped you do that transition.
Yeah, actually, I want to say that starting out in title, I started out, my first title company, accounts receivable. So I started about as low as you can in a title company, and I just worked my way up. And at that very first title company, I remember being trained by a woman, Dolores. She was amazing. At the time, I was scared to death of her. And my only goal was, I don't want Dolores correcting me. So I became really good at attention to detail because I didn't want to have to talk to Dolores. In later life, we shared recipes, we became friends, I would bake bread for her. I mean, it was lovely, but it's because of Dolores that I really became good at attention to detail, which, as you know, in title is very, very necessary.
It's the backstop.
So from that, going into getting my license, I remember so many people when I first got my license, I was expecting my last child, and everyone was like, you're going in to take your test while you're pregnant? They talk about baby brains or whatever. And I'm like, well, yeah. And, and I took my test, and afterward they're like, how did it go? Do you have to take it again? I was like, no, excuse me? They're like, that's a tough test, and I was like, no. And I think the thing that stumps a lot of people were the things that we know. We know property taxes. We know how calculations work. When I first started, this will date me even more than you can. When I first started, I had to look up plats like in the big giant plat books. I think you came after that was already gone. But I literally, I would pick those books up that are as tall as I am and, flop them on the desk and have to look for, PIN numbers, and that kind of stuff doesn't scare me. And I was also trained at that first company by attorneys, so they would sometimes pull me into their office for paralegal work too on the side.
Yeah, real detail-oriented stuff. It's important.
It is, yeah. So that gave me, I think, a really amazing base that maybe makes me step out a little bit from the average realtor that's coming in maybe from just a marketing background or some other type of background within
not necessarily real estate. Yeah, they could be a teacher or something. Say,
right.
Hey, I
and they're stellar realtors. I mean, they're still amazing. I think it just gives me a little bit leverage in one area. That marketing person's got a leverage over me in that area, but yeah, it definitely helped me be better at what I'm doing.
Good. Well, now you and I have been talking a bunch here over the last couple of weeks about what we wanted to talk about here today. And I know one of the big things for you was, why should people use a realtor? I know that's been a big, it's a question that obviously probably everybody sees on social media or whatever, but you kind of had a unique take on it. You kind of want to walk us through like what your take is on why should somebody be using a broker, a realtor?
Yeah, I know we kind of discussed the NAR put out 184 reasons why. They break down into a lot of categories, but one of the biggest is for me, a lot of people they're looking on the internet first. And I have to tell you, 80% of the time when I take those clients into the property, it's not what they were expecting. And I'm pointing out things that the pictures are not going to point out. Yeah. That little blurb that a very creative realtor wrote to sell the property for their client.
Yeah. Sometimes
that's me. Maybe skim the surface a little bit of what
is actually going on.
And I mean, we always disclose everything, but we count on, like on my listing side, I'm really great. I'm very forthcoming. I let my sellers know we need to disclose everything on these properties, but I count on them having a buyer's agent representing them as well. I'm about fair play. It needs to be equal representation. And I want those buyers bringing in an agent. I want them to have representation that says, hey, you know what? This furnace is this old. Let's ask about that roof. Some of that stuff, yes, some clients are definitely going to know and they're going to ask, but the majority don't. Sometimes they're just oh my gosh, this is my first house, or I just need to get out of my mother's house, or, there's just, I'm living in a basement, so.
A lot of
they
overwhelm.
They get kind of skimmed. I remember I had one client that she insisted, I am not going to live near power lines. She had her reasons, whatever those be.
Okay.
She's on a house that she was going to buy at like $20,000-$30,000 over asking on a for sale by owner. I had been her agent. I actually had to step away from the transaction, but I still went in because I wanted her to be okay, and I was the one that had to say, okay, I just want to point out that this has 4 of the things that you told me were absolute no's for you on a property. Can we just step back a minute and look at this?
Yeah.
And it did work out well for her, and I played devil's advocate for you to make sure, okay, is this really what you want? Is this the best option for you? If I'm on the buy side, I talk to the lender and I make sure, are they pushing their budget? Where are they? Like, where's their down payment? Are they comfortable? Are they under budget? Because I'm not supposed to be anybody's mother, but I try to make sure that I am definitely a very interested aunt that's looking out for you and making sure that you're making a purchase that's going to be the best for you.
So is there a different, because a lot of it can be overwhelmed, like you're saying, is there kind of a different approach that you take, say, for buyers than sellers? Or I'm sure there's some common things in there. But
there are definitely common, like the common things are documents. I understand disclosures. I understand local ordinances. Inspections. Part of the reason I work with Citywide is I know you guys help us out with that. There's your plug. But no, truly, that is one of the best things that I have to say is, why I encourage my attorneys to work with you is because otherwise, guess who's out there chasing it if they drop the ball or if they're a one-man shop or, I don't want to be doing that, but I know about it. And those are the things that I give to both clients. It's like, hey, we need to have a village inspection on this on either the sale side or the buy side, or, how are we doing it? Now, with the buyers, the approach is, like I said, I'm going in trying to tear that property apart. Not to talk them out of it, because a lot of times I go in knowing, oh my gosh, this is the one for them. This checks their boxes.
Yeah.
But I believe in buyer beware, full disclosure. I want them to know up front, hey, I know you had some budget money going. I'm thinking that maybe, let's discuss that this is where you're going to put it first. Let's get this taken care of. Still a perfect home for you, still wonderful, but maybe let's approach this one first, or let's get some prices so you're really aware of.
Here's what we should tackle first, where you think, like, my opinion is you'll get more bang for the buck this way as opposed to maybe what they're thinking.
Exactly.
Put it in a pool. Like, no.
No. Let's fix that crack that's not really causing any problem right now, and let's keep it that way, like doing stuff like that. Those are some of the approaches I'll take with a buyer. Yeah. Maneuvering, being a liaison for them and their lender, their attorney, their inspector. Sure. Because sometimes those inspection reports, you've seen them, they can sound really scary, and they're really not. Like, if you actually talk to the inspector's even saying, hey, you know what? I wrote it this way because I want you aware and I want you to maybe prioritize your list. Sure. But this is a good home. And that's what I want at the end. I want to hear what they have to say at the end. Okay, I see the list. Yeah. What's your opinion? Where does my client stand on this? Yeah. And if they use my preferred inspectors, my inspectors are honest about that. And probably most inspectors are, but mine I make sure are, not alarmist, but truthful and thorough.
With your buyers, do you have, say, attorneys? I'm assuming you have just attorneys that you want to refer. You've got a lender that you prefer to work with. You probably got a couple. Yes. How do you introduce that, say, to a buyer? If they come in and say, oh, Charlie, you know what? We got approved at X bank, and it's not somebody you work with. Is there a specific way you handle that, or is there?
I always ask them if they're willing to get a second opinion. Oh, okay. Because I have a couple lenders right now, and I know their costs are great, and one of them, interest rates, historically, they're always a little bit below the average other competitors. What that means for the buyer is not up to me. I stay in my lane. But I at least want them to know and ask those questions. So sometimes I guide them on the questions they need to ask. what are my total costs? What is, what are my fees? What's my interest rate? What am I looking at long term on this?
Sure. Is it ever loan or program specific? If you have folks that you know are going to be FHA or VA, do you kind of have all that stuff?
Yes.
You're not getting pushback from somebody from, if you recommend or that second opinion, like you said.
They won't always do it,
Okay.
and sometimes they end up regretting it. But
Well, hopefully not.
hopefully not too much. But
Yeah.
no, I've had lenders kind of come in when they will save a deal for me when they do have to circle back to using my preferred lender.
Yeah.
So again, still a win.
Sure.
They're getting the best deal. We saved a deal, and we were handled by somebody that was
Okay.
fluent in the situation.
What about sellers? Anything particular? Is there kind of something that stands out like, boy, all sellers do this and I wish they didn't? Or something?
They try to price their own house. So
Yeah.
that is, or my worst nightmare is, well, such and such company, to be named later, says that it's worth this. And I was like, oh, did they come in and see the house? Because
Yeah.
I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
And here's what we need to do in order for you to get anywhere near that value. Or quite often it's like, no, you have all these really wonderful features. I actually, from the comps I'm pulling up
Okay.
and the competition I'm seeing, I think we're more here.
Okay.
And, that's what we're going to do. With my sellers, I also walk through the home with them with the fine-tooth comb. And I let them know, like, listen, this was your home. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's an estate and they're
It's an
indifferent.
emotional thing.
Right. Sometimes it's like, they're like, listen, we just need to sell it. And I'm like, great, here's what we need to do.
Yeah.
Other times I'm like, I love the way your grandmother decorated this. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
But for listing, will this all be gone? Can we do a fresh coat of paint?
Yeah. Okay.
I have professional cleaners. I have a referral base that I have built up over the years of
Okay.
trusted professionals, plumbers, handy persons, inspectors, painters, electricians, just
Yeah.
what do we need? Because
Okay.
I don't want this house that is otherwise perfect to be stigmatized because you did not fix that sink.
Okay.
That's ridiculous. It is, a couple $100 over hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Let's fix it. And I'm not afraid to get in there and say it and not be insultive, but my goal is that they get the maximum for their
And people, for the most part,
value.
I mean, when you're telling them and just, being honest, hey, we need to do this, most people are pretty open to that
They
stuff.
they
right?
are. I let them know too. And my thing is, I go and I say, listen, I'm going to give you a list of everything that Charley Realtor would love to see happen to this property.
Okay.
From there, you figure out your budget,
Mhm.
your time, and you decide what we can do. And I said, and I will give them to you, because I always do a follow-up email from that conversation.
Yeah.
I'll give them to you in order of prioritizing.
prioritize, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
that here's what I would really love.
Yeah.
But I respect budgets. I respect limits. I respect time, because that's the most valuable thing I'm seeing with most people. Even with, like the documents and knowing state laws and different things, it's like, could a lot of the people that I work with handle a transaction for themselves, not for others, but for
Sure.
themselves? Probably. But do they have the time to do all that research that I just know?
Yeah.
I've already learned it.
Yeah.
I know it. Do you have that time? Like, is your time more valuable than that?
Is that the biggest thing when you talk about buyers and sellers? The reason they should use a broker, specifically use you, it's the experience. Is that what you're trying to get across to them? Is, hey, listen, you could do that, but
Yeah, I do. It's the experience. Because
Okay.
could they do the whole transaction? Most people know.
No,
I mean,
no,
you and
no,
I
no.
both
Yeah,
know
yeah.
that. We've been at enough transactions that, in my own deals, I still have an attorney sitting beside me. I still close at a title company. I don't
Yeah.
cut corners for myself. Why? I mean, if I'm not cutting corners, I know at your closings, you've had attorneys there that you close at a title company.
yeah.
You're not cutting
Practice what
corners.
you preach.
Yeah, it's like you're not cutting corners. Why? I think that should be the tale that people should see, that, hey, my realtor uses a realtor. My realtor uses an attorney.
Yeah.
maybe there's something to that. And,
Well, actually, that's a great way of saying it. If you're
Yeah.
doing that as a professional, then me, who's just Joe Blow on the street, definitely I should be doing that.
Exactly. I remember
Okay.
one of my attorneys even saying, he goes, Charlie, you remember you trained me in real estate. He used to be a litigator. And I was like, yeah, but you know what? You're going to look at this for me. I was like, you're going to
Yeah.
make sure that the title's waived. You're
We
going to make
dotted our
sure,
I's, crossed our T's.
that deed comes back to me properly.
Yeah.
This is your, and he always laughed. That was always his thing. You trained me. And I was like, no, that's okay. You're still going to be representing me here today.
Yeah.
So those are the things that I just, it's like for those people that feel like they could handle it,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to dispute that. I'm not going to argue that point with them. I'm not,
Yeah.
it's possible, but how good, what's going to be missed, and
Mm-hmm.
do you want to do all the stuff that I've been learning over the last 27 years?
Yeah, well, most
You
people
know.
do a transaction or two in their lifetime.
In their lifetime, and
You'll do
I've
more
done
than that in a month.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm here and I'm doing it and I'm seeing it and I'm seeing the things that don't work. We've all made our mistakes. We've all learned things the hard way, but
Yeah.
use my experience and don't.
Hopefully,
do
you don't
that.
have any of those. Yeah. So now we're working with buyers and sellers. You've kind of walked us through that process. Is there, speaking of closings, like what is your outlook, your goal for the closing? Like, is there? You tell people, hey, it's this date, right? But
Right.
there's way more to it than that, right? I mean,
Right.
what else? What other things are you trying to communicate
So
with clients?
once we get under contract, getting to that contract, if I'm on the sales side, I'm talking to the lender. I'm feeling them out as best as I can. Like, how
Okay.
qualified is this buyer before we even accept this offer? That's big too
Okay.
on the sales side. Once we are completely, everybody's in agreement, okay, we've signed, we go into the attorney review and inspection process. I'm very involved in that. We make sure that the attorneys are on point with their dates, for review. We make sure those inspections happen in a timely manner, that we get the
Yeah.
reports back, that if there's any discussion about repair credits, repairs that the seller's just going to do, anything like that, we want it to happen in a timely fashion for both sides. Because
Yeah.
if it's not going to work out, they both need to be able to move on. We need to reactivate, or our buyer needs to be able to move on to the next phase. Once we're past that 5 to 7 day process,
Yeah.
then it's weekly check-ins. And me, on the listing side of it, I'm a coordinator. I become a coordinator of, I say I like to keep all my monkeys in the circus playing nicely until it's time for the big performance, because it is my circus and they are my monkeys.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. No,
those are the things that I try to, I do those weekly check-ins. When the appraisal gets scheduled with me,
Yeah.
I meet that appraiser. I say, here are my comps. This is how I looked at the property.
Okay.
This is the number of offers I had, because sometimes,
Well, that's a good one.
when we were in those multiple bid over asking price, I don't always encourage my sellers to take those, but there was one time the seller did take it. The market had done kind of a jump during our listing time and during all this, and I was able to get way over even my listing price that I was thinking.
Oh, fantastic.
The appraiser came in and he's like, listen, he goes, where you listed it, he goes, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I can even cushion that a little bit. What are we talking? And I gave him a stack of offers.
Oh, wow.
I was like, well, here is 25 offers. We cut off after 30.
Oh, wow.
These are just the top 25 that I had, that my clients and I spent a couple hours going over to decide which is
Yeah.
best, and they were all close. So I said, I'm thinking market demand is going to back this up. And he goes, can I take these? And I said, you absolutely can.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So
Okay.
I always do everything I'm supposed to. I black out names. I
Sure,
I do
sure.
everything I'm supposed to do. But that appraiser was like, I'm going to use these. Thank you. This will help. And I thought, anywhere that we get close above it, I was
Yeah.
happy. And I let my clients know right up front, no guarantees. It appraised. It appraised for the asking price. And
Nice.
it was crazy. So those are things that I go do and that I'm not afraid to do. I'm not afraid to go meet those appraisers I just had one where I had to. I've never had that in my career where we were off a lot. Where it was under, and I actually, you know me, I actually pulled a red pen on that appraisal because there were things that were just, it wasn't even like my or Scott's opinion. It was like, well, that's just wrong. There's more bathrooms than this. I'm like, whose house did he go see?
So a technical thing.
Even things like that. I'm not afraid to defend the action of the
you're
transaction.
Sticking up, you're advocating for your client.
I am a huge advocate for my client on either side. I will bulldoze if necessary. It's usually not necessary, but every once in a while,
So you're hitting the dates. These contracts nowadays. There's a lot of dates in there that you got to hit, and it seems like you're more of a ringleader, essentially, use your circus analogy. But a lot of that is hitting those dates. Is there anything specific to that you kind of always do, regardless of the contract, for the closing? Is it just prepping them with wire? Do you got your money ready? Or, if they're on the buy side, if they're a seller, like, hey, just make sure you don't do this. Like any kind of stuff like that?
Yes. like on the sales side, it's always personal property has to be out. And people don't seem to understand that concept. It's a tough, and you and I, like, we both just kind of laughed at it, but it's like, it really, I hit it the most. And they're like, so when do I have to have all that out? Closing. And, prior to closing would be ideal.
Yeah.
And then I start getting a little nervous. My heart's racing a little bit. Like, okay, wait a second.
Why did you ask that?
Yeah. I'm getting a little nervous now. And, okay, so we're closing at 11 on Friday.
What's the latest?
And I was like, the night before would be perfect. If your moving truck, if it is an owner occupied, if you're moving, I would really like for your moving truck to be there prior. But I get it. Sometimes not good, but I'm like, everything, you need to plan on being gone by at least, if our closing by 9:30, because we're doing a final walkthrough,
So, I don't want to see all your stuff.
Yeah, I mean, because, then that's where the title company and the attorneys, I'm sending a little note or a text message to the attorney, well, here's some pictures. Good luck.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be, some holdbacks or something happening.
Fireworks.
Yeah.
So speaking of that stuff, is there anything, we're getting up to the closing, we've discussed the closing, is there any kind of post-closing? Do you have like a system or a procedure in place for post-closing, just to make sure that there aren't any kind of lingering issues, or is there just stuff, hey, I always do this?
I always do a follow-up with my clients. And before the closing's over, actually, or once it's complete, I let them know, listen, I'm here if you need anything, what do you need? And they will. And I think that's the biggest honor I have, is when I receive a message, hey, Charley, I know that we closed 6 months ago, or or whatever, but do you by any chance have a copy of that settlement statement? My accountant's asking for it. Absolutely. Let me get that to you. I have everything, even my handwritten notes, because I'm kind of old school sometimes that way. I'll have handwritten notes when I'm walking through a property. Yeah. I scan them, put them into a digital format. So I literally, I can even refresh my mind on a transaction when I pull it up to say, oh, that's right, I remember.
Oh, yeah, we were talking about doing this. Yeah.
And, okay, yeah. Or, hey, Charley, you know what? The, that home warranty that you convinced me to buy, or that, you had me get, or you negotiated for the seller to get, or I need to use it. What do I do? No problem. Here, let me pull up the report. Here's this. Charley, I need a plumber. Oh, I have one.
Yeah.
I literally want to be, I always tell people I want to be your realtor for life. I don't want to just do this transaction with you. I want your referrals. I want your family. I want when you do decide if you are going to be that 2 to 3, home purchase person in your lifetime, I want to be 2 and 3. I want to be the guide for that. So I make sure that I have a good resource base, and that I'm available. It doesn't matter if we're in an active transaction.
Do you think you get more pull through or more questions, I guess, from buyers or sellers, or is it kind of even? Is it more, buyers are just, it's more you get feedback from them as opposed to sellers, or what's your mix, I guess? On
post close?
Yeah, like once it's done, once the deal's done.
It's probably a lot of them are buyers. I had a first time buyer that I closed this last year. A young couple that were just wonderful. And I knew they were going to be doing some improvements on the home, and I was actually getting pictures of Charley because they know this is going to be their first home, and they're just doing some work. They're like, for resale purposes, this staircase or this staircase? And I was like, ooh, I like both. I'm like, I love this. And so we're looking through it, but I was able to say, now you need to watch there. We need to have a handrail, but you can put that up later, but because I always still guide them towards, you're going to live in this home for 5 years. Be happy in it. Make it yours. Don't worry about the paint. You paint the way you want to paint. We can bring somebody in to paint neutral.
Well, at least you got them thinking about resale or like, hey, how will this affect?
Exactly. And that, when I got that, I was like, success. This is amazing. Like, they heard me. And I mean, that to me was just a huge victory, and it made me just really, really happy.
Fantastic. Is there any kind of post-closing stuff that pops up? I mean, obviously you get good stories and hopefully good feedback. Is there anything else post-closing you see that's like, hey, here's something I do that's unique?
I would say it's mostly that follow-up, and still, like, I'll still every other year or so I go hand deliver thank yous to my previous closings for the year, buyers, sellers.
Oh, wow.
Just to stay in contact. And
nice little touch.
Just I want them to know, really, you can ask me, you can reach out to me, you can like, let me know what you need if you have a question. And they'll reach out about just even a broader aspect of real estate or market questions, or hey, Charley, I've been hit with lots of, and I wish I could come up with some of them, because some of them are kind of funny, but they're
not necessarily like, hey, here's a transaction that it's going to be, but just like, something happened.
Hey, did you know this? Or or hey, do you remember that family that they thought was living under the porch? Yeah, we cleared those rodents out. Or it's like, it's just kind of random stuff sometimes, but I like that in a broad aspect, I'm kind of still part of their team, part of their life, part of, the aspect that got them to the home that they were hoping for.
Well, and hopefully anybody that sees this, hears this, is thinking, well, that's kind of the end goal, is you want to be part of that team, not just now, but maybe it's down the road, and it may not specifically be with them. Maybe it's with family members or relatives or kids or something.
On that aspect, I was just I'm an active member of my B&I group, and we just had like a cross chapter mixer, and there was somebody that came up, and he goes, hey, I'm Zach, and I was like, oh, Zach, nice to meet you. And he goes, and then he said his last name, and I go, I'm like, you're part of the, and he goes, yes. And he goes, you were amazing. You closed 4 transactions for my family, and we're actually friends on Facebook because of the family, but we had never met. And through this B&I group, he was talking to somebody else in another chapter and said, hey, that Charley, she's a powerhouse. She closed 4 people in my family.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I said, I love your family. And so now we're working and trying to do business together. He was the only person in the family I didn't get to close their home. They were already in a home.
Oh, okay.
And but now we're working together. So there is something to that power of, just minding my reputation, doing the right thing, staying the course. I'm okay if somebody doesn't choose me for whatever reason. It's okay. There's different realtors, there's different personalities. I'm okay saying no to a client that I don't think is maybe going to work well with me or do business the way I think it should be done, and
may not click or whatever.
Yeah, it just doesn't click. And I am a firm believer. I used to be in training with my office, and I'm a firm believer there's enough business for everyone, and that it doesn't have to be cutthroat, that we can all look out and lift up each other. And I know I'm an anomaly, but that's how.
Well, you did so at your brokerage, you did have a unique position where you were doing a lot of the business plans with other brokers to say, hey, how are you addressing these things? Because it is important. It is important.
And I mean, to this day, they'll sometimes still call me, and I have no problem. Or even, they'll be on the other side of the table on a listing or a transaction that I'm doing, and I still go into training mode. It's like, hey, you really should do this for your client. Just cross that. And I still go into that mode. Training, it was a passion of mine, and
Well, you're still kind of doing it now. You got to get people to like respond to like, hey, we got to respond to these time constraints, these dates,
exactly.
or whatever.
Like here's the push, here's the push, here's the push, here's the push. I'm still smiling.
Well, a lot of what we've been talking about, a lot of good things from previous experience for you with and your passion for training and all that stuff. That kind of brings up. There are a lot of changes in the industry right now. We've talked about these at length at other discussions for different reasons.
Yes.
What are some of the things now that, as just a broker in general, you need to be careful of, and kind of how have you built your business around maybe making some of these changes or addressing these concerns?
One of the biggest ones is that a lot of people are seeing on the news and media is the commission structures.
Sure.
Now, I've always done this. I was fortunate. I was trained under, Tim Ryan, who you've done these with, and I was told, this is how you explain commission.
Yeah.
You, as a lister, I negotiate my commission directly with my seller, and I let them know from this commission, this is what it breaks down to. I want to get the maximum buyers for your property, so we're going to go on the MLS. And in the MLS, I want to offer another agent a cooperating commission to come in from my commission that I've negotiated with you. Mm-hmm. It's not an additional amount. It's like I'm negotiating this amount, and from this amount, I'm giving this person because I want, again, as I alluded to earlier, equal representation, and I want to maximize the number of people that are going to come in and see this house.
Sure.
And I want those buyers to beware, because with an equitable marketplace and with people being equally represented, it just stops future problems too. Because if this buyer comes in just, oh no, I'm fine, oh, I don't need an inspection, I don't need this, I'm representing my seller. I can't advise them on all that. I can say, well, you should at least get an attorney. Oh,
yeah.
What do I need an attorney for? It was like, oh my gosh, can I list the reasons?
Do you have time?
Please sit down. But
yeah.
I mean, my hands become tied because my client that I'm representing and taking care of is well represented between me and their attorney. This person isn't, if they're not coming in with an agent and an agent advising them on a good lender and on a good attorney and on a good inspector. I always have done that. I've always explained that to my sellers. I guess some agents, or maybe there was, a lot of miscommunication maybe on how that all broke down.
Yeah.
My sellers have always understood that breakdown, but I'm seeing on the news and I always think,
yeah.
Well, why weren't they explaining that?
Well,
because
it's
not
like
new. It's not new information. It's not a new concept. It's not a new program. They've broken down the marketing agreement a little bit to make it even clearer, in my opinion.
Sure.
Should we increase the font size? It's already there. Like, what do we need to do? And it was actually larger than the rest already. So, it was like, what else can we do? And it's the realtor needs to explain it.
Well, it really sounds with what you're talking about today is that whether you're representing the buyer or the seller, you're still looking out for not just the other side, but to make sure that your buyer is getting the best seller to offer them a property. And if you're working with a seller, we're getting the best buyer to come in and buy your property.
Exactly.
Is that a fair?
That is. That's exactly my goal. I do. I just want what's best for the transaction for the persons that I'm representing. And if I'm representing the seller and we get the best buyer, well, that means that the buyer's happy too.
This should be the best transaction for everybody involved.
Exactly. So it does keep the market equitable, fair, and It keeps everybody working in this market because we like this diverse marketplace that we have of different agencies, different brokerages that can train and hone our realtors to understand and navigate these transactions the best.
Is there anything else out there that you want to discuss or bring attention to as far as maybe things you've seen in the last several years? I mean, I know there's been so many changes, but it's...
There have been a lot of changes. I think that it's just improving. It is just kind of honing in, like you said, and really fine-tuning. I believe systems that were already in place. I think it's just, more of a focus on training, which I love. I love doing it. I love taking it. I'm all about the training.
Yeah.
So for me, it's just, honing in. There's, for our licensing, there's certain CE we have to do on an annual, biannual basis. I do so much extra, and that is for me to be the best I can be for my clients, to make sure that I am aware. You guys offer a lot of training. Sometimes it's just informational. It's not even really training. It's like, hey, did you guys know this was going on? Here, we're bringing in an expert. I attend those. I watch those. I look at that. I volunteer at the association in different different committees. Thank you. It's for my education. It's like, yes, I'm volunteering and I'm helping on this committee or doing this, but for me, it's like, well, geez, who knew that? Like, that's amazing.
Additional information I can give to a buyer or seller and say, hey, here's this other essential avenue for you to
right. And if we keep the market going like this, and with realtors at the base of it, it's only going to help the consumer. It really, I truly, truly believe that.
Well, that's what comes, talking with you, obviously, every time we've ever had a discussion, I know it's always, it's never about Charley. It's how does this work with the consumer? How are they looking at me?
Yeah.
Is that a fair?
It is. My reputation and the way I proceed, meeting Zach the other day, that is why that transaction was 6 years ago.
Oh, wow.
The last one I did was for them, maybe 4 years ago. But,
So that the end result is they remember you 4 years later. That's a pretty solid statement.
It is. And you would have no idea how excited I was. That I was like,
no, I have a pretty good idea.
Yeah, I'm a little animated. But no, that meant the world to me. And I have always focused on, I've always teased, hey, if I'm at the Jewel, the Jewel. I don't want to hide from my clients, my past clients. I don't want to have to be like, oh my gosh, that's so and so. I want to go up and be like, hey, how are you? How's that house? And that's what I want. I'm not good at the hiding or the oh my gosh, I don't know what to say to this person. I want to just be able to be out there and how's everybody doing? What's going on? And that's priceless to me.
Well, fantastic. So all this good stuff, what is the absolute best or easiest way to get it? Where can people find you? Because obviously there's going to be people out here that say, that's who I need to work with. How do they reach out and get to you?
Yeah, you can email me, text me. You can go to my Facebook business page. You can find me on most social media networks. You can go to my website. You can find me, and I do answer. So,
wow. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Charley. I'm glad we got to reconnect and
me too.
Get you on the show today.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.